Hello and welcome to BCC Virtual Racing. This week's course, the Road to Ruins, is 29.6 kilometres long with a 0.4 kilometre lead in, one lap, and it has 268 metres of climbing in the form of two hills, the longest of which is 2.4 kilometres long. This could be a race for the climbers. Let's join the riders in the start pens as they begin their warm-up. 19 BCC riders tonight in the A's. Lancia will be hoping for another win, but it is a hilly course which may not favour him. Jury in there as well as the only other Category A rider. In the B's, Davis will be doing all he can to win that category but stay under 4 watts per kilo. And in the C's, let's not forget the ongoing battle between Collier and Stoneham and Littlewood and Tamsin. As a reminder, start times are staggered at 1 minute intervals for each of the 4 categories. 2 seconds to start with riders in the B pen, and they are off. Only 10 riders in the B field tonight, so a good opportunity for riders from BCC to get a podium position with Davis now. He'll be keen to consolidate his position in the Bs. Also riding with him at the moment, Mayhew, Smith, O'Brien, Taff and Shannon. Unfortunately, Campbell didn't make the start tonight. 1 minute later, the start of the C race. And of course, the question tonight is the Stoneham and Collier battle, with Stoneham having won the last 3 races. This being a hillier course may suit Collier slightly better. We shall have to see what happens after the first hill and probably more importantly the second one. Right now, I wouldn't want to bet on either rider. 23 riders in Category C, with 9 from BCC. Having a look at Nixon now. I'll first look at Category A with Lancia out in front. Jury in there as well, of course. She'll be keen to hang on to this bunch throughout. Based on past performance, I think this is something she might just do tonight. Shannon out the front of the B's, probably not where he wants to be, but I'm sure he'll move back to his more familiar position of mid-group. With Category C, Morton on screen at the moment, along with Littlewood, Jones, Nixon, I can see in there as well. A Collier as well. No sign of Stoneham. I have to see if I can find him. But very early days in the race at only 2.1 kilometres in. And just slightly further back for the moment, Tamsin and Telford in this small group of some 8-9 riders. With Langen now, I'd expect to see him much further up in the field than this. Perhaps he's just out for a leisurely ride tonight. 4.6 kilometres in, and I found Stoneham with Collier as expected in this group as well. Littlewood, Morton and Nixon. I wouldn't expect them all to stay together as one group, but we'll see what happens a little bit later on. And in fact, not much later, Littlewood begins to make a push on this first climb, leaving Morton and Jones some 4 or 5 seconds behind, and here is Morton just seeing the group ahead disappear. And 9 seconds behind Morton we have Tamsin by herself at the moment, but I think she'll probably catch up with some of the other BCC riders in front of her. And on this hill, Stoneham and Collier already beginning to show signs of pulling away from the rest of the BCC riders. Looks like the competition is on. Shannon, surprisingly all by himself at 5.7 kilometres. This first climb seems to have taken it out of him. His fellow BCC Category B riders some 30 odd seconds ahead already. And here are 2 of those riders, Taff and O'Brien, together with Mayhew Smith 11 or 12 seconds behind. And here is Mayhew Smith, who eventually goes on in this race to be disqualified again by the Glasgow Green Cycle Club, so unfortunate for him. At 6.6 kilometres, this is a bit of a surprise. Davis by himself, or at least with 1-2 other riders, which is probably something he's not so keen on. In fact, there are a couple more there. Oh no, this is up the front with Lancia. Following Lancia up the first climb of the day for him, and here we are with Jury in the same group. I expect she's happier climbing up this mountain than Lancia is. On the first downhill section, this is a point where Lancia really should take advantage of his size and weight and try and pull ahead of Jury if he can, because if he can't shake her off here, then I suspect she'll be with him right to the very end of the race. O'Brien and Taff still together after the first climb, and now on the downhill section. The gap further back to Shannon now widened to 1 minute 30. And now with Collier, just 2 riders, no others behind. He is now 6 seconds ahead of Stoneham. He's clearly put in an attack on this hill and hopes to distance himself. I hope this is a strategy that will work for him. Let's see what happens a little bit later on. 20 seconds behind Stoneham is Nixon on the first climb, and just behind him is Littlewood. And there is Littlewood. In fact, he is 13 seconds further back and can just see Nixon on the hill ahead of him there. The riders really are stringing out on this hill. 17 seconds further back is Morton, and a couple of seconds behind him is Tamsin. Then we have Jones, and I think a little further back, yes, here we are, we have Telford as well. At 10.1 kilometres on this gravel section, O'Brien and Tarf, some 30 seconds behind Davis. I'm sure they'll be trying to catch him. At 9.6 kilometres with Collier. His attack seems to have worked on that climb and on this gravel section, some 27 seconds ahead of Stoneham, which I wasn't expecting. Here is Stoneham with a small group of riders. Doesn't seem to be pushing as hard as he normally does. I wonder if everything's okay there. A little bit further back in the field, by 30 seconds, we have Nixon, and some 25 seconds further back, Littlewood. And not far behind him, Tamsin, Morton and Jones. In fact, here is Tamsin and Morton riding together. And a last look at Langham tonight, who is clearly just out for the leisurely ride at 6.7 kilometres towards the very back of the field. With Tarf and O'Brien still maintaining a 30-second gap to Davis. About 1 minute 45 further behind Tarf and O'Brien. Shannon pretty much riding his own ride at the moment, but still going quite well. Back to the main event of the evening, the Collier versus Stoneham battle. Collier still maintained a gap. However, it looks as if Stoneham is making a bit of a push, and looks as if the gap is beginning to close as well. Tamsin and Morton still together, some 11 seconds behind Littlewood and 40 seconds ahead of Jones. And here is Stoneham continuing to close the gap on Collier, now down to 12 seconds, and he will be able to see him ahead. This has been a great effort on his part. I had thought that he'd given up at some point, and here is Collier desperately trying to stay ahead of Stoneham. With the other competition of the evening, the O'Brien-Tarf battle, both riders look as if they're continuing to challenge each other. O'Brien going for a bit of a push here, but Tarf is responding to every move he makes. Now is Davis, still in a small group at 15.8 kilometres. Still just under 4 watts per kilo, and this is a surprise. Lance here by himself, or with one other rider. In fact, he's now 11 seconds behind Jury. He's blown up by the looks of it, and he's lost his winning streak. The question is, can Jury maintain this gap? She's right at the front with the A team, the A group, sorry. In fact, she looks quite focused and responds to every move her fellow Category A riders make in this undulating part of the course. Lancia will now need to watch out for Davis, who is gaining on him and may well catch him. 120 back at this stage, but I wouldn't be surprised if that gap closes. It looks as if Shannon has consolidated his position 2 minutes behind O'Brien and Tarf. I'd probably expect him to stay here. Here we are with Stoneham and Collier. The two are now together, so Collier's attack early on worked for an extent, but wasn't sustainable. Stoneham's made a big push and caught him up. They're now both 51 seconds ahead of Nixon. That is a gap that is increasing. My guess is these two riders will stay together towards the end, and here's a view of Nixon going over the wooden bridge. I can just see Stoneham up ahead at 8.6 watts per kilo, trying to drop Collier, but now Collier's in front. These two looks as if they're continuing to attack each other, looking for weaknesses. Stoneham now 1 second behind. No, Fatty is right behind Collier. There he is. This will be a battle to the finish line, I expect. Littlewood and Tamsin have come together. In fact, they have left Morton, who's 1 minute 1 second behind. That's a little bit unexpected. I'm not sure who made the move there or who might have dropped back. Quick look at the very front of the race. Jury has continued to perform very well, has responded to every attack from this group. Unfortunately, not so good news for Lancia, who has continued to drift slowly further back. Now a 38-second gap to Jury at 22.1 kilometres, 39 minutes in and 8 kilometres from the finish. O'Brien and Taft still riding very well together. Their gap to Davis ahead has widened now to nearly 2, in fact just over 2 minutes, so it doesn't look as if they will catch him before the finish of this race. Back at the front, in fact the very front in first place at the moment, Jury still pushing well, still holding on. Lancia dropping even further back, and here we are with Collier on the downhill. Is he with Stoneham? Yes, both riders are still together. Stoneham should have the slight advantage on the downhill, but it doesn't look as if he has capitalised on that. 127 further back in the field, Nixon on that same downhill section, and Littlewood with Tamsin as well, a further 2 minutes further back in the field. Up at the front of the race, and Jury is still there. What a great performance. 400 metres to go, riders just beginning to wind it up for the finish, and there she goes. 11, is that 12 watts per kilo, pushing hard now, just dropping off this small group. Isn't going to win it, but she does cross the line as the first category A rider for BCC. 40 seconds further back in the field is Lancia, building it up for his final push for the finish. His winning streak broken by Jury, but he eventually crosses the line in 48 minutes 39 seconds. In the B's are Grand Tour winner Davis, just about to build it up for his final sprint for the finish. An aerial view here. Here he goes, I think. Riders ahead of him going, yes, there he is. He's sprinting now, pushing hard with Davis, and a 200-metre sprint for the finish, really winding it up now, and he eventually crosses the line in 48 minutes 59 seconds. O'Brien and Taft still together as they enter the last 400 metres of this race. Taft begins to push a little bit harder, pulls out to overtake O'Brien. Does he get it right? Yes, he does. He pulls in front. O'Brien cleverly uses a featherweight power up that he must have held in reserve, and that's enough to allow him to overtake Taft, and they both cross the line in exactly the same time. Shannon, with no other BCC riders around him, makes his final push for the finish, and he eventually crosses the line in 53 minutes and 31 seconds. At 29 kilometres, Collier and Stoneham still together, and due to technical difficulties with the outside broadcast camera, I don't unfortunately have the sprint finish, but Stoneham won that with a superb display of sprinting. Nixon pushing for the finish now, crosses the line behind Stoneham and Collier by roughly 40 seconds. This is a rider that's showing increasing promise, one to watch in the next race. Littlewood and Tamsin 400 metres towards the finish, and as has happened before, Littlewood has the stronger sprint and has pulled ahead, and he in fact crosses the line 2 seconds ahead of Tamsin in a time of 57 minutes 16 seconds. Morton finishes a further 3 minutes back in the field, a good race from him. Jones a further 30 seconds behind Morton. Again managed to finish another race riding by himself. Telford finishes in 1 hour 4 minutes 58 seconds, a slightly average par for him. His last 3 or 4 races have been at a higher average watts per kilo, so let's hope he does better next time. As we join Langen in his leisurely ride towards the finish, let's have a look at the results for this evening's racing. Rider of the day is undoubtedly Jury, who wins her first Category A race for BCC, coming 4th overall in fact, and breaking Lancia's winning streak of I think 5 or 6 races in a row. Superb tactics from O'Brien and a great use of a power up just in the final sprint allows him to beat Taft. And finally, although not captured on camera, a great battle between Collier and Stoneham. Stoneham winning in a superb display of sprinting right at the very end, beating Collier by a fraction of a second. I think that may now be 3 or 4 wins in a row. Thank you all for watching. The next race is on Thursday night.